I love the accent of our cooler. The RGB fans really make this what it is, and having that RGB along the front is really cool. Hey everyone, Digital David here. Today on this episode of Newegg Now, I'm going to be building a PC specifically for content creators. Whether you're filming, streaming, gaming, video editing, this is going to be the PC for you. I do want to thank Newegg for sponsoring today's video and Be Quiet for sending us some of these parts and components that you see here, as well as the case we're going to be using. And shout out to Lexar for sending us the RAM. But everything else you see here was purchased by me. And regardless of that status, any opinion expressed is strictly my own. If you're interested in any of the parts and components, the links will be in the video description. Now let's go ahead, let's look at all the parts to this build. So here's a look at all of the parts to this build on Newegg, and you can see what we have our public wish list title. If you want to check it out, it'll be linked below. It's the Content Creators PC build. Currently the subtotal is showing $2,600. This isn't accurate. I mean, it is. If you wanted to buy all the parts today, that's what you'd pay. But keep in mind, we have a massively overpriced GPU in here. This is about double what the MSRP is. So keep that in mind. Prices will fluctuate. So hopefully it can go lower for you. It should be around that $2,000 mark if you can get a GPU at MSRP, any of the 3060s. If not, it will be around this price point or even higher if you want to bump up to maybe a 3070 or a 3080. But let's look at all the parts and components that we have. First up, we have our CPU. This is the Ryzen 9 5900X, great 12-core CPU. If you want to spend a little bit more, you could get the 5950X. That's another great option, especially if you need those extra cores for your video editing or demanding applications. Next up, what really makes this build and sets it apart is the motherboard. They have a great price on this board right now, $429. That's going to be typically $100 less than any other retailer. So well done, Newegg, on that. Great deal for this board. Why did I pick this board? For a couple of reasons. One, USB galore, tons of USB for you, which is really important. The second thing is Thunderbolt 4. If that's important to you, you'll enjoy having that with this board. For me, it's the 10 gig networking. They also have a 2.5 gig port as well. And last but not least, PCIe 4.0 for 3 M.2 drives. I'll show you that drive later. That gets blazing fast read and write speeds. Next up, here's the RAM that I'm using. Feel free to swap it in with a different RAM that's going to be a better value. I couldn't find the RAM that I got from a different seller on Newegg. I paid around $120 for 32 gigabytes instead of what you're seeing here, 16 gigabytes for 115. So feel free to mix and match that with DDR4 of your choosing. But I do like the Lexar RAM. If you can find that, go ahead. You can get that as well. It's really up to you, but you can save a couple of bucks there. Next up, we have our RTX 3060. This is the Asus TUF Gaming version. So you can see the price. This is about double what the MSRP should be. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully you can find one at MSRP, or you can use an older one as a holdover. Next, our case. This is the Be Quiet Dark Base 700 mid-tower case with RGB LED lights. It does include two 140mm fans. I prefer Be Quiet parts and components for my content creating PCs because I'm filming using them and obviously streaming. And these are very quiet, true to the name, which is why I like to use their cases, their fans, and their power supplies and coolers when I'm doing a build for my content creating PCs. They just seem to be the best in my opinion. So this is the case we're using. Really excited to build in it. Then you can see we have our Pure Power 11 FM. This is a 750 watt modular power supply. They have a couple different options for that too, 550 and 650 if you prefer. Next, we have my favorite M.2 drive. This is the PNY XLR8 1 terabyte drive. So this is what I like to use. Blazing fast speeds at PCIe 4.0. You just can't go wrong with this drive. Next, you can see with the Be Quiet Shadow Rock 3 CPU cooler, 190 watt TDP, plenty for our 5900X CPU. And then last but not least, if you want to get a copy of Windows 10 or Windows 11, you can do that as well. You can get the downloaded version if you don't want a DVD or USB flash drive and you want to get it right now. Now let's go ahead, guys. Let's get our PC built. First up, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna remove the 2 included fans, and I'm gonna swap them out with this 3-pack of Light Wings fans so we can have some nice RGB glow. So we'll take these 3 included fans and we're gonna connect them right here, so 2 for the intake, and we're gonna have 1 for the exhaust. Now you can see what it looks like with all 3 fans installed. Again, we swapped out 2 of them with our RGB fans, and then we added a 3rd RGB fan. Now let's go ahead, let's get our LED hub in place. So since this hub is compatible with a 2.5-inch bracket mount, you can see we have a couple different options here to mount it. We're gonna mount it right here. Now you can see it installed on the back right here, and then we have our 2 cables we're gonna have to connect later with everything else. So on our motherboard, we have a couple of different parts and components to install. We're gonna install the CPU, the cooler, our RAM, and our M.2 drive. First, let's go ahead, let's prep for our cooler. So we're gonna remove these 2 pieces right here, and then we're gonna take our 4 screws and those 4 black pieces, and we're gonna drop them in place, and we're gonna install those with these brackets. So it's gonna go black spacer, this bracket, our screw down in on this side, and then same thing on the other side right here. Pay attention to how we have the bracket too with that bump up. It's not gonna be a valley, it's gonna be a mountain right there. And you can reference the user guide and manual with your cooler as well. But we're doing the AM4 option right here, and it is labeled for us. So let's go ahead, let's get that removed and get these installed. So here you go, you can see what one side looks like right here. Again, you're just gonna take these 2 pieces, drop them in place, line up the metal bracket here, and drop those 2 screws in. For the AM4 installation, you do not use the included washers, so you can just set those aside. Now you can see both brackets have been installed. Let's go ahead, let's put the CPU on. When installing the CPU, make sure you line up the gold triangle right here with the triangle on the corner of your socket. So we have this lever right here. You're gonna go ahead, you're gonna open that up. Now we're ready to drop it in place. Again, match the triangle with the triangle right there. So we're gonna flip this around. And you can see we have the triangle on this side too. It's a little bit easier to see on the other side. And just gently drop it in place. So there we go. It just fits right in. And then you take this lever and then you snap it shut. Now we have successfully installed our CPU. So before going any further with the CPU cooler, I recommend getting your RAM installed. So here we go. We're gonna take our 2 sticks of RAM. We're gonna follow the indicator on the board. So for our first 2 sticks, we're gonna use A2 and B2. It's only gonna go one way, so make sure you have it lined up properly. And then just gently press in place. You should hear it snap. So there we go, just snapped in place. And now let's take our second stick. Same thing, line it up, only gonna fit one way. Gently press. There we go, just snapped in place. And now we have successfully installed our RAM. Also at this step, while we have the most room to work with, I'm gonna go ahead and install our M.2 drive in the first slot right here. So we have to remove this cover and we'll get it installed. Here's what it looks like with the cover removed. Check this out, this is really cool. So when we install our M.2 drive with this board, it's gonna snap right in, and then we have this little lever right here, and it locks it in place, no screw needed. Now we're ready to put this cover back on, but be sure to remove this piece of film before you finish installation. The film has been removed. Go ahead, tighten it back down. There we go, we have successfully installed our M.2 drive. Now with everything else prepped, it's time to finish our cooler installation. I wanna point out again the really nice design with this cooler and how basically it's off center, giving us more space on this side and flexibility in the future if we want to upgrade our RAM. It's not gonna block anything. We'll still have room for our fan as well too. So in the future that maybe I do wanna come back here and put 2 extra sticks in. I don't have to remove the whole cooler. If anything, I'll just have to take the fan off. So I'm really a big fan of this design. So we're ready to take the included thermal paste. I'm just gonna give it a little press here on the CPU. It's gonna be about a pea size, as you can see. Make sure to get all the rest of it out of there. Now we're ready to peel off this cover. Make sure you do that before use. And then you can see how we're gonna line it up with the Be Quiet logo and branding. We're gonna drop it right in place. And while we're doing that, we're also gonna have to come and take this bracket that you see right here with these 2 screws. That's gonna go like this in between, and we're gonna fasten it in place. So go ahead, you're gonna place this on and line everything up and then fasten it down. Side note, go ahead, place that screw on there first. It's gonna make your life a lot easier. Now just take turns tightening both screws. So you can see we drop our screwdriver in through the top right here, we can line it up and tighten down. And then repeat that process right here and continue to work them both until they're nice and snug. So there we go. We have successfully installed the cooler. Now let's go ahead. Let's get the fan installed. You may notice right here, I went ahead, I swapped out the included fan with a Be Quiet RGB fan. So this is their Light Wings fan. We got a nice RGB ring right here. I think this is gonna look really cool. So we're gonna go ahead and clip this one right on the side as you see here. Now you can see we have the fan clipped in place on both sides. Very simple. You're gonna go ahead, you're just gonna thread that through the fan like you see right here. And then you just press this back until it's clipped into the sides of the cooler. So you can see how that works. Pretty easy. Then you can kind of just pull this to get it loose again. And they do give us 2 additional clips. So if we wanted some more cooling on the other side, we could put another fan right here on the cooler. But there you go. We got the motherboard prepped and all set and ready to go. Now it's time to get the motherboard installed. For this particular board, first thing we have to do is peel off this plastic cover right there. Now we're ready to just gently set it in place. So we have 9 standoff brackets right here. 8 will have a threaded option for us for the 8 included screws with our case. So just go ahead, gently set it in place. Line everything up just like so. And now take those 8 included screws and tighten them down and fasten in place. So now you can see we have the motherboard successfully installed. Now to get the power supply installed, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna work it through the side right here, line it up and fasten it in place. At this stage too, I recommend putting the cables, plugging them in first at the back, and then we can just take the unit, slide it in, and fasten it down. So you can see all the cables we're gonna use for this build right here. We got 1 drive, we have 1 PCIe, we have our CPU, and then we have our motherboard connected. Now it's time to slide it in and fasten it down. Now you can see we have successfully installed the power supply. Now it's time to go ahead and get everything hooked up, so let's look at all the connections. So here's a look at the back side with all of our cables managed. You can see how we just tried to route it down the main channel, broke off as needed to connect to our LED hub or our fan hub. Then we have our CPU power and some additional fans routed to the side. And then we cram some of our extra cables just right down in here. So you can obviously tidy this up however you see fit. For me, in this case, I have access to everything that I need, so I'll be able to easily come back here and swap out or add parts and components. So I'm happy with it. Plenty of space to get really creative. Now you can see what it looks like from the front side. Let's really dive in and let's look at the individual connectors and how we have everything. So looking up close, you can see over here we have our audio connector. Then moving along, we have our 2 LED RGB connectors right here, our 12 volt and our 5 volt. Then we have our front panel connectors right there. Moving along, you can see we have the GPU installed and we have our power right there for it. Then you can see tucked away under there, right below it, we have our USB 3.0, our USB Type-C right here for our front panel. Then you can see we have our system fans connected right there to our hub. And then we have our main motherboard power. Moving along up to the top, you can see we have our CPU fan connected. And then you can see we have our CPU power right there. So that's all the different cables and connections for this build. So here you go. You can see the PC booted up. We have our BIOS screen loaded. Check out the beautiful RGB fans. And don't forget about the really cool RGB that we have on the front of the case. So overall, this was a great build. We have a fantastic PC now that just looks really cool. I love the accent of our cooler. The RGB fans really make this what it is. And having that RGB along the front is really cool. So I like to see that Be Quiet is continuing to add and spice up their product offerings by giving us some RGB. Overall, very pleased with this machine. It's fully capable of doing everything I'm going to ask from it. And if you're a content creator looking for a great PC to stream, to edit, and game on, you're definitely going to want to consider this build, but feel free to mix and match the GPU, maybe bump up that CPU. But I would highly encourage you to stick with that motherboard. You can't go wrong. That is going to be a great choice for you. That does offer some legit future-proofing as well. This will be able to handle all of your business needs, your content creation needs for years to come. Well, that concludes our video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget the product link will be in our video description below. Please go ahead, check it out, and do your shopping from there. Any purchase made through that link helps support our channel at no additional cost to you. So we're really grateful and thankful for all of your support. While you're at it, can you go ahead and hit that like button for us? And subscribe to our channel. We have new content coming out daily, and we don't want you to miss anything. Please go ahead and give us a follow online and make it a clean sweep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. You can message us on WeChat, check out our website, and join our free newsletter. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget, new content daily, and we can't wait to see you in our next video.